Welcome back. So now we have a module on Outlook on the web, and some of you have heard us saying Outlook on the web, and now we're going to explain why it's Outlook on the web.
It's not Outlook Web Access?
That's the same thing.
Outlook Web App.
No, it's Outlook on the web.
Okay.
So let's cover that first. What is the new name, new feature? So there's a new name, and I guess some people thought the old name of OA was maybe confusing to users, and they wanted to make sure that we update the name to reflect new standards, new modern ways that we can do things. There's some new features in Outlook on the web. It doesn't roll down the tongue that easily,
Quite as easily as OA.
As OA, yes. So now we have modern attachments built into OA, which actually makes it a really nice experience when you want to, when you receive attachments. We still have what they call Outlook Web App policies, so we're going to talk about that, and then configuration options that you can set in OA as well. So, or Outlook on the web. Wow, that's difficult. So let's get started. So a new name with new features. Now that we have different Outlook clients, so you have an Outlook client for iOS, you have a Outlook client for the Windows desktop, you have an Outlook client for the Android phones as well. Microsoft decided to also rename OA as a client and call it Outlook on the web because it's just Outlook on the web. So keeping with that Outlook brand, making it much more prominent and just saying where it is. So there's Outlook on the desktop, Outlook on the web, Outlook on the iOS.
Now that makes sense. I did not know that.
Yeah, so that is where the new name came in.
Okay.
And so obviously a bunch of new features, and a lot of these new features is features that was introduced in Office 365. So Office 365 had a lot of these new features, and those things just happens automatically. They just drop a feature in there, people start using them, and once those features gets really baked in, people like those features, then they can become part of the on-prem product. So
what you're saying is that if I were an Exchange Online tenant, I would be able to benefit from features that an on-premises user wouldn't have access to until 2016 came out?
Yeah.
Well, that in itself is another reason to go over to Exchange Online.
Yes, definitely. So a lot of the features is first introduced in Outlook on the web, on Exchange Online, Office 365. And once those features are available there and it works well, then they bake it in the into the on-prem version. Some of these features that was introduced in Office 365 is the new document collaboration features that is available with modern attachments. So when you receive a attachment in Office 365 and now in Exchange Server 2016, you have this ability to do things inside of the Outlook on the web experience and edit documents, view documents, using the Office Online server functionality. So the Office Online functionality gives you the ability to do stuff with attachments. You can edit the attachment and send back your edits to the person that sent you that message already.
Yeah, well, what the really cool thing is that I really like is being able to do it in the same window as the email. Yeah. So when I get what do they call it? Not a sticky attachment, but a webby, cloudy attachment.
Cloudy attachment.
I can open it and see my email on one side where I can respond, and as I read the document in the left-hand side.
Yeah.
I can also edit the document, and all in the same browser window. Now that's really cool.
Yeah. So you don't have to go to another application, or you don't have to first install Word or something like that to be able to edit that document. So you can do all of that right inside of your web browser. We also integrated this with OneDrive for Business. Because one of the things that happens with attachments when you send attachments, you tend to send a lot of attachments and people send them back and forth. And before you know it, after a couple of weeks, you don't know what is the document that everybody is working on, because
The versioning issue.
yeah, versioning issues and so on. So with integration with Outlook and OneDrive for Business, you can store this attachment on your OneDrive, and you just send somebody a link, and then Outlook and Outlook on the web will automatically give people access to that attachment, and they can edit the attachment directly inside of OneDrive for Business, and they will be able to do modifications and so on. So that's a good integration with OneDrive for Business, and you need to set this up. So you need to have some sort of hybrid configuration.
Because it is only supported with the OneDrive with SharePoint Online, correct? Yeah. At this time, anyway.
Yes. And so the viewing of attachments, that needs the Office Online Server. Office Online Server is a server that you download from the Microsoft website that allows you to render documents inside of a web browser and see what the document is about, so that you don't have to download that document first and then open it up with Word.
It's a newer version of Office web apps.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, you need to configure your Office Online Server to be able to use this functionality. So you have to tell Exchange about the Office Online Server, and you have to think about availability of that server and so on, make sure the server is highly available always. And you also have to tell your Office Online, or configure the Office Online Server so that it will allow connections from the Exchange server and let you view documents in that way. So let's show people some of these features in Outlook on the web. So yeah, I'm logged in as the administrator in my Exchange mailbox inside of Outlook on the web, and I've received a couple of messages already, and you can see here that there's a bunch of features available that you are used to inside of Outlook. You can drag and drop emails, so I can select the email and drop it to another folder, which is amazing in a web browser. You can click on a new calendar, new email, that things that you usually do in Outlook as well. And then there's a couple of other features here, like Sweep. Sweep is a feature that was introduced in Outlook.com, which helps you to get ahead of your mailbox, because sometimes you get a lot of newsletters and so on. It may be things that you've subscribed to over the years, and you forgot to delete them. And with Sweep, you can say, well, this message, I want to keep only the current one, and all the previous ones, delete them. Or always delete any message that's older than 10 days. So it's an intelligent rule to detect this is a newsletter, and I don't want to keep, the specials from 2013. I only want to see current specials. So that is the Sweep functionality. You also have emoji inside of Outlook on the web now. So if you create a new message and you want to type in something, you have the ability to add emoji. We're trying to be hip with the times and give people the ability to add all these funky characters and so on. So let's have some sushi. And we can attach documents and so on when we send it to users. So all of that functionality is built into Outlook on the web. So I'll just send this message. It's warning me that there's no subject. Let's just send it anyway. So when we look at some of the attachments, when we have an Office Online Server available, we can view this attachment inside of the browser and edit that if you want to allow that. So here I'm looking at my document, viewing it inside of my web browser. I didn't go to another system, and I can now click on Edit and Reply. And just like Joe said, I see my message here on the right-hand side, what was said about this message and so on. And on this side, it's currently rendering, and now I can go and edit this document and say, Please add more detail. And I just send that message. It will go and save the document on that and send that new document with my edits to the person that sent the email to me. So that was a really nice experience. Previously, you had to save the document and then reattach it and so on. This was just reply and edit, done. So Outlook on the web is really powerful.
It rocks.
Okay, so you can also configure the experience that your users get, and this you do with Outlook web app policies.
Okay, so I'm sorry. It's Outlook on the web, I thought.
Yeah, so I guess, not everybody got the memo, everybody got the email that this changed. So some of the functionality, obviously, like the commandlets and so on, still says OA, and Outlook on the web is OOTW. So a lot of the commandlets still says Outlook web app.
So I was being facetious because I knew that, but Outlook web app policies are really good. They let you configure the settings for specific users or a group of users. They're very a powerful way to configure what you want your users to be able to do in Outlook on the web and what you don't want them to do in Outlook on the web. Perhaps, it'd be best just to do a little demo and show people what I'm referring to.
Yeah, so I think Outlook web app, if you want to configure how do people set up and what experience they get, Outlook web app policies is the way that you do that. And you may want to allow people to only do certain things. Maybe you have users that are factory workers and you don't want them to muck around with a calendar because they are just supposed to work in the factory and they're not supposed to schedule meetings and so on. So you want to remove the calendar functionality from Outlook on the web, and you do that with the Outlook on the web policy. So let's see, what do we have?
Okay, so I'm signed into the Exchange Admin Center as an Exchange admin, and because what we're referring to, Outlook web app policies, have to do with permissions. That's the node where you will find Outlook web app policies. So you click that tab. And when you install Exchange, a default policy is automatically created for you, but it's not enabled. But if you can create new ones. In fact, I mentioned earlier that you can apply these to a user, specific set of users, or a large group of users. So depending on if you had, say, one department where you wanted to allow users to be able to do this sort of procedure, you could create a policy that lets them manage this or that, whereas users in another department, maybe you don't, and you restrict that ability to do that in Outlook on the web. But we'll take a look at the default policy that is created but not enabled by default. And when you open up the properties of the policy, you have four places to go: the general, which is just the name of the policy, and then the features. Everything is enabled by default. So this would be your starting point. If you were going to restrict anything, this is where you would come to uncheck any of the checkboxes for those features that you didn't want users to be able to do for one reason or another in Outlook on the web. It doesn't show all of them. You can click more options, which shows even more of those features that are available.
Okay. So that, to go back, one of the options there was the calendar option. If you untick that time management, then they will not be able to access their calendar while they're using Outlook on the web.
Let's find out. But before we apply that policy, I want to go back and show the other two places, which was file access. Are you going to allow direct file access through a public, like a kiosk shared computer, or just private computer? This would be the place where you would set that. And then your offline access. If you wanted to enable offline access for Outlook on the web, who do you enable it for? For everyone, just for private computers, or just never at all?
Okay.
Okay. Again, like I said, it's not applied by default.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to, let me look at this user here. Help me out here, Martin. Where?
Mailbox features.
Mailbox features, duh. And then that's right, you have to scroll down here.
Yeah, I think you scrolled past there by
Email connectivity. Not very intuitive, but that is where it's at. Mailbox policy, default. Okay, so if I were to log in as that user,
logged in as an administrator.
admin, right.
Because you already logged into this server with as the Exchange administrator.
Well, you can take my word for it that if I were going to log in as user 1, I would not have access to the calendar at this point.
Okay, yeah. So this is really the ability for you to manage what users will be able to experience.
Able to or not able to do.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So there's many configuration options or places where you can set these things as well. You can set this on a server level with the OA virtual directory. You can tweak settings inside of the virtual directory as well. You could do this with a policy.
That's a really good point, and I should mention that when you use a policy, that will override any of the settings that you've configured for the virtual directory. If I didn't enable that virtual directory or the policy for any users, it refers back to what is configured on the virtual directory itself. Policy overrides the virtual directory.
Okay, yeah. So those configuration options is then inherited from the policy or whatever you set in the virtual directory if it's not in the policy. And then users will be able to see that experience based on what you decide your configuration should be. So you may set it up in a way so that when they use a particular set of servers, they will see some features, but if they use another set of servers, they will see other features. It would be sort of confusing to do that if you do that to your users, but there may be some sort of use case in certain organizations to do something like that. Another option that is kind of interesting to me is the ability to make your Outlook on the web experience available inside of a web browser, but in an offline mode. So new modern browsers have the ability to cache information on the desktop so that you have the information on the desktop and you can view your email inside of a plane while you're flying. Maybe you don't have Wi-Fi on the plane, and then you can view your messages, reply to them and so on in an offline mode. So that's another experience. This was previously something that was not something that a user that uses Outlook on the web. So maybe you have clients that don't support Outlook, so to give them a rich experience, you gave them Outlook on the web, but they didn't have offline access. Now they even have offline access, so that's a great feature as well. And then all the Outlook add-ins that you have in Exchange gives you the ability to see and look at the content. So when I send you a mail message and I say, hey Joe, let's schedule a meeting for next week and talk about this feature, then Outlook on the web will see like, oh, here's a suggestion for a meeting, and it will allow you to click on that and then set up a meeting immediately because it looked at the information inside of the message to see that there's some suggestion. Or if there's an address, it will say, hey,
hit the Bing map.
It will bring up a Bing map,
yes,
and it will show you where this meeting will be or something like that.
Right.
So those are the Outlook add-ins that is surfaced to the users in Outlook on the web. So Outlook on the web, we have a lot of great features that's available, from modern attachments, a new name, the ability to manage all of those features, take away features, give users features. A lot of great ways of giving users a good experience or great experience when they don't have access to Outlook, or when they will never have access to Outlook because they run an operating system that doesn't support Outlook. So that is Outlook on the web in a nutshell. And next up, we're going to talk about mobile devices, because mobile devices is what users really want.